I met my husband long before I ever imagined he'd be the person I'd spend my life with. We grew up together in a quiet neighborhood, our homes only a few houses apart, where every lawn was familiar and every street corner felt like home. Back then, he was the boy with a mischievous smile who would roll his eyes when my mom fussed over my hair. Yet he was always the first to tease me if even a single braid was out of place. I was the girl who pretended not to notice how he looked out for me. But deep down, I felt the safety of his presence wherever I went. Our days were filled with adventures only we understood. Racing our bikes down the main road, climbing the old oak tree in the park to see who could go higher, and taking turns daring each other to do silly, harmless pranks on our neighbors. We became each other's shadows, sharing the kind of companionship that feels as natural as breathing. In school, we had an unspoken understanding that went deeper than just friendship. If one of us was in trouble, the other wasn't far behind. If I forgot my lunch, he'd split his sandwich. If he stumbled over his math homework, I'd be there, pencil in hand, ready to help. As we grew older, life took us in different directions. We went to separate universities, entered different circles, and had our own share of experiences. We both explored relationships that taught us more about love, trust, and the kind of companionship we truly wanted. But no matter where life took us, we'd find ourselves reconnecting during school breaks, holidays, or just a random weekend home. Each time, it was like no time had passed, and we fell back into the rhythm of our friendship with ease. Then, after graduation, life brought us back together in a way that felt almost destined. I remember that first time we met again as adults, sitting across from each other in a coffee shop. The boyish charm was still there, but now there was a maturity in his eyes, a quiet strength that drew me in, almost as if I was seeing him for the first time. We talked for hours, sharing our dreams, aspirations, and the lessons life had taught us. It was as if all those years apart had only deepened our connection, making it stronger and more meaningful. Over time, our friendship transformed into something undeniable, a love that felt both comforting and exciting. We discovered that we shared the same values and dreams, and our bond only grew deeper. When we finally committed to each other, it was like the missing pieces of a puzzle coming together. The love we built wasn't just based on romance, but on years of shared memories, unwavering support, and a friendship that had stood the test of time. And in that moment, as we began our life together, it felt like everything had fallen perfectly into place. Despite our deep love, neither of us had ventured far beyond the basics when it came to intimacy. In past relationships, we'd both played it safe, sticking to what was comfortable and familiar. Together, our moments in the bedroom were sweet, gentle, and full of affection, but nothing that pushed boundaries. We weren't exactly adventurous. Our time together was filled with tenderness. He'd always take my hand, look into my eyes, and make me feel cherished in a way that warmed my heart. He was, and still is, the most caring and thoughtful man I've ever known. Every time he held me close, it was as if he was saying, "You're the only one for me." And I believed him wholeheartedly. But over time, a small, unspoken feeling began to stir within me, a sense that maybe we were missing something. Our love was as strong as it had ever been, a steady fire that had kept us warm. But lately, I found myself wondering if we needed a bit more of a spark. There was no denying the beauty of our connection, but I couldn't shake the sense that it had become a routine, a rhythm we followed without ever deviating. I'd lie next to him, thinking of how we'd fallen into patterns. The same touches, the same whispers, the same predictable steps. As much as I love him, I could sense his energy in the bedroom wasn't as electric as it used to be. His eyes didn't have quite the same gleam, and there was a subtle shift in his enthusiasm. I started to worry that maybe he felt the same way but didn't know how to bring it up. And that's when I realized that I wanted to try something new, something that would bring back that thrilling anticipation, that quickening heartbeat we'd shared in the beginning. It wasn't that I doubted our love. If anything, it was stronger than ever. But I yearned for that edge, that unpredictable spark that would remind us both of how incredible it felt to fall in love all over again. One evening, after a quiet dinner, we nestled into our usual spot on the living room couch. The lights were dim, casting a soft glow around us, while the TV hummed in the background, filling the silence with comforting sounds. I settled against him, his familiar scent mixing with the warmth of the room, and let my head rest on his chest, listening to the gentle rhythm of his heartbeat. His fingers drifted through my hair, slow and absent, each touch relaxing me a little more. In that cozy, unhurried moment, I felt an urge to share something that had been weighing on my mind. I shifted slightly, turning my face up toward him, and his eyes met mine with that calm, steady gaze that always made me feel safe. I tried to keep my tone casual, as if this was just another light-hearted conversation, but I could feel the subtle flutter of nerves. "Hey," I began, my voice soft, "have you noticed? Things feel a little different between us." His brow furrowed, and he gave a small, thoughtful nod, but I could tell he was skirting around the question. "I guess I've been tired lately," he murmured, eyes drifting to the TV. "You know, with work and all." His voice was steady, but I could sense the hesitation there. I paused, letting his words sink in, but something told me there was more. This wasn't just about long hours at work or busy schedules. It was deeper, something he might not even realize he was holding back. Taking a breath, I gave his hand a reassuring squeeze and spoke gently, my tone warm but insistent. "I just want us to be honest with each other, no matter what," I said, hoping he would feel safe enough to open up. His gaze softened, a small, grateful smile forming at the corners of his lips as he took my words in. He looked down at me, his eyes searching mine, and I could tell he was considering how much to share, how honest to be. It was a small moment, a vulnerable pause between us, but I could feel it was the start of something that might bring us closer, even if it meant facing the unspoken things we'd kept hidden. After a little more coaxing, he finally admitted something that left me completely speechless. He took a deep breath, his hand resting on mine, fingers fidgeting slightly as he looked down, gathering the courage to open up. His voice softened, and I could see the hesitation in his eyes as he began to explain. He confessed he'd been holding back because he had certain fantasies, things he'd thought about trying but never dared to mention. He wanted to bury his pole inside my mouth with other styles, but was afraid I might feel uncomfortable. Or worse, think less of him for wanting something a bit outside our usual comfort zone. As he spoke, a new vulnerability settled on his face. The confident, thoughtful man I'd known for so long was, in that moment, just a husband who wanted more but wasn't sure if he could ask. He kept glancing up at me between sentences, searching my face for any sign of discomfort, as if he was bracing himself for rejection. His hand tightened slightly around mine, and he paused, almost waiting for me to pull away or to laugh it off. I could see a nervous hope flickering in his eyes, and it made me realize just how much courage it had taken him to reveal this part of himself. But as he shared, instead of feeling uncomfortable, I felt an unexpected thrill course through me. Knowing he'd been imagining new ways for us to connect, finding ways to keep our relationship alive and passionate, filled me with excitement. It showed me that he was still deeply invested in our bond, in keeping us close, and I admired him for it. A smile tugged at my lips as I listened, feeling the excitement rise as he detailed some of the things he'd thought about. I didn't feel any judgment. Instead, I felt a mix of curiosity and eagerness that I couldn't hide. I wanted to know more, to understand the side of him he was revealing, and I wanted him to know that I was right there with him, ready to explore whatever he had in mind. His relief was almost palpable as I squeezed his hand and nodded, encouraging him to go on. It was as if a weight lifted from his shoulders, and we both found ourselves leaning into each other, drawn closer by this new layer of honesty and trust. I felt a wave of boldness, a sudden thrill wash over me, a spark I hadn't felt in ages. Leaning in, I closed the distance between us until I could feel the gentle warmth of his breath brushing against my skin. My hand moved slowly, tracing the firm line of his chest, fingers brushing over the steady beat of his heart beneath his shirt. It was as though each inch of space I covered quickened my own heartbeat, the air between us tingling with an electric charge. I let my fingers drift lower, feeling the subtle shift in his breathing, the slight tension that built in his muscles beneath my touch. It was a playful motion, a daring tease, as my hand hovered toward his zipper, grazing it lightly, my eyes never leaving his. The effect was immediate. His eyes widened, and the warm, familiar look in them was replaced with a flicker of surprise and a glimmer of something deeper, something unguarded. His breathing grew shallower, each rise and fall of his chest echoing the excitement building between us. For a moment, he looked at me, silent but completely captivated. I could see a beautiful mix of emotions in his face: surprise, intrigue, maybe even a little wonder. He hadn't expected this bold move from me, and yet he was already swept up in the moment, allowing himself to follow my lead. With a mischievous smile, I leaned in close, our faces only inches apart, and whispered, "Let's get started." My voice was soft, my words carrying a promise of excitement, of rediscovery. His gaze met mine, a spark of surprise mixed with eagerness, and I knew he understood exactly what I meant, that I was ready to explore this uncharted side of our relationship, ready to embrace the unknown together. The room felt warmer, almost alive, as though the energy between us had shifted and time itself had slowed down. I could see the flicker of anticipation in his eyes, the way his chest rose and fell a little quicker, as if he were holding back a tide of emotions. It felt as though an invisible wall we'd both quietly constructed over the years was breaking down, freeing us to step into something thrilling and unfamiliar. He reached for my hand, intertwining his fingers with mine, his touch both gentle and firm. I felt a rush of excitement, a blend of exhilaration and a touch of nervousness, as he leaned in, his lips finding the soft curve of my neck, brushing a trail of warmth that sent shivers down my spine. His other hand slid to my waist, pulling me closer in a movement that felt both possessive and tender, as if he were embracing something precious. In the quiet of the room, every small sound and movement felt heightened, magnified, as if we were the only two people in the world. This wasn't just a moment of passion. It was a doorway, a chance for us to rediscover one another, to peel back the layers of routine and see each other with new eyes. We had spent years together, weaving our lives and routines tightly around us, and yet here we were, about to step into something that felt like a fresh, exhilarating beginning. As he held me close, the warmth of his touch filling me with a giddy sense of adventure, I felt an overwhelming rush of gratitude. I realized, in that moment, that this simple act of letting go, of embracing something different, was all it took to reignite a spark that had been quietly waiting in the background. Sometimes, it only takes a little courage, a willingness to step out of the familiar and embrace the unknown. Wrapped in his arms, filled with laughter, love, and the thrill of new possibilities, I knew this was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter in our story.